Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to another GameMaker tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be doing some basic, well, it's actually a little bit more advanced. This is kind of a tutorial for advanced users. We're going to be using some basic shaders and a surface in order to create this effect right here, where you can have a silhouette behind a tree. Before we get into the tutorial, I did want to mention real fast that on my website, there'll be a link in this video. There is my October sale, and it's the last 2 days for my October sale. My GameMaker book, the PDF version, is 50% off, and my GameMaker Udemy course is 92% off. It's only $10 right now. So at the end of this month, they'll both go back up. If you want to take advantage of those deals, you can hop over to my website and do that. Also, this course actually uses my Heartbeast movement engine. I just used it because it makes the player object and the physics for this really easy with only a couple lines of code. And so we can jump right into the right into the tutorial instead of spending time writing the code for the player and stuff. So you can just download that from my website as well, import it in, and then what you'll need to do is create a tree sprite like this, just however you want to do that, so we can use the tree for the silhouette system. So let's talk a little bit about method here before we get into the actual system. So what we need to do in order to create this effect is we need to find the intersection between two sprites. So when you overlap two sprites, how do they intersect? And the way that we can do this is, let me show you. I don't know the best way to do this. I just came up with this method and it works. So I'm going to show you guys. And we're not going to go into the details, a lot of the details about how to optimize this. I'm just showing you the basics for how to get it working. This won't necessarily be super optimized. And it won't have depth. So you won't be able to decide, if you're in front or behind the tree, whether or not it shows it. I'm not going to go into the implementation of how you would do that, but I'm going to teach you how to do the basic silhouette. So if you know anything about surfaces, which you need to be able to follow along with this video, we're going to create a surface that is inside of our room, and then we're going to draw both sprites onto that surface. But first, let's pretend this right here is our surface right here in paint.net. And what we're going to do is we're going to fill our surface with a black color, so the entire surface is black. Then what we're going to do is we're going to grab our tree, and I'm actually going to grab the tree from this project real quick. We're going to grab our tree and we're going to draw our tree onto this surface. Well, actually, no. We're going to draw the player first. So let's say our player is a little blue square. So yeah, we're going to draw the tree, or we're going to make the surface black. We're going to draw the player. Oh, it's because I don't have the room selected. So we're going to draw the player in the room. There we go. We've got our player object, right? We're drawing it onto the surface as well. But we're going to draw the player object completely white. So if the player object's blue, when we draw it on the surface, we're going to draw it white. And we're going to use a little trick for that I'll show you. But whatever your player color is, you could actually use a shader for it, but there's a different way to do it that's fast too. So you'll draw your player white. Then what we're going to do is we're going to draw the tree. Only we're going to draw the tree. We're going to draw the tree, and we're going to draw the tree gray on top of this surface. So I'm just going to we're going to draw it black. We're going to draw the tree black. Okay? Now, that's the wrong intersection that we need, right? Because this gives us the intersection for where the player is behind the tree. It doesn't give us the right intersection. But what we're going to do is we're going to draw the tree with an alpha value of 0.5. Aha! Now do you see what we've done? We've drawn the player. And in fact, let me move the tree to make this more apparent. Yeah, anywhere we move the tree. So we draw the surface completely black, draw the player white, and then we draw the tree on top of the player with a 0.5 transparency in black. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have a shader that goes through this entire thing. So I'm going to merge these together. And we'll have a shader that goes through the entire thing and deletes everything that isn't gray. So then we end up with this. Let me zoom in here so I can do that. Oops. And obviously, Paint.net uses interpolation between pixels, so that's why we have these extra colors or these extra gray values. But normally what this will leave you with is your shader will delete everything that's not gray, and all of a sudden you will have the intersection between those two sprites, and then you're going to draw that in the room. So that is the method for how we're going to accomplish this, and I wanted to show it to you guys so you could see it visually, because it's a little, I guess not super complicated, but it's a little complicated. This is the method that I came up with for finding that intersection, and that's what we're going to be doing in the tutorial video. Let's not save this. Okay, so we've got our sprites. You should have your tree sprite. You should have your player and your solid. Let's create the tree object. So we're just going to call this tree and give it the tree sprite like that. And then I'm going to put it in the room. Let's put the tree in the room right there. That looks good. So the player has a -5 depth. I'm going to give the tree a -10 depth. So it'll be in front of the player. And you can see if we run the game at this point, in fact, I need to save this as a different file, but if we run the game at this point, we go behind the tree. And the player currently has a bounce value that's set, so I'm going to turn that off. There we go. File, save as, silhouette. Who spelled that anyways? Silhouette video. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to create the surface that we're going to draw all of this stuff onto. So I'm going to actually create an object for this. You could do this a lot of different ways, but I'm just going to do an object because the surface needs to be drawn in front of everything. So I'm going to do a -50 on the surface, the silhouette object. Now I'm going to add a create event. This is where we're going to create the surface, and that is my example code popping up there, my reference code. Okay, so we're going to do create the surface. Don't really need reference code for this. Surface equals surface create room width, room height. Like I said, I'm showing you guys the basic implementation for this. I'm not showing you how to optimize it. If it were me and I were doing this in a game, which I have, I would make sure that the surfaces I was creating for this were only the size that they needed to be, and then do the math to move the objects around and get it to draw correctly on that surface. But it's a little bit complicated math. I don't want to go into that. So we're just going to do it the entire size of the room. Now we're going to add a draw event. And in this draw event, we're going to draw the surface. But we need to check to make sure the surface exists before we do anything with it. So if not surface exists, surface else. So if the surface doesn't exist, we need to create it again. Surface equals surface create room width, room height. And then what we're actually going to do is we're just going to have a script. So I'm going to create a new script, and we're going to call this draw surface. Oops. Oops. Sorry, not draw surface. Draw silhouette. Okay, I think I spelled that right. For now, let's not put anything inside of draw silhouette. We're just creating it so that we can do it right here. So draw silhouette. And then draw silhouette. Okay. And we're going to be drawing this silhouette onto the surface. So if you want, well, yeah, we'll just do it this way. Okay. Now what we need to do, that we have that working, is we need to make sure that, first of all, we need to make sure that when we end the game, we destroy our surface so we don't have a memory leak. So I'm just going to do room end. I think I'm going to sneeze. Maybe now that I said that, I won't. Okay. Destroy the surface. Surface free surface. So we're just making sure to clean up the surface when we end the room. Now what we need to do, we need to put that silhouette in the room. And we're going to do the hard part, which is drawing the actual, doing all the drawing that we talked about in paint.net. And I have my reference code here. I'm just going to pull that up. So what we're going to do here is surface set target. Surface reset target, and the target that we're going to set it to is the surface. This just makes it so that like I said, you should probably already know how to use surfaces, but this just makes it so that everything we draw is on the surface. So now we're going to do draw clear C black. That makes that, remember the first part where we filled the entire surface with a black color? That's what that does. Then we're going to do D3D set fog true, color C white, start 0 end 1. And we're going to draw the player. So do with player draw self D3D set fog false C white 0 0. Okay, so this first thing we're drawing, make the surface black. Now we're going to draw the player white. Okay, then the last thing we're going to do is draw the tree with the tree black with an alpha of 0.5. Remember that? This is the steps that we did. Okay, but we're using the D3D set fog to draw the player white. You can also just use a shader to do that. If you create a shader that you can just set the color to it and draw it white, you could do that. But why not just use D3D set fog? It does the same thing. Now let's draw the tree black with an alpha value of 0.5. So we're going to do draw, let's see, with tree, make sure we get the right object. Draw sprite ext sprite index image index x y image x scale image y scale. I'm just passing in the default values for the object for drawing this right now until we get to the alpha and the color. Rotation image, oh come on, my fingers are in the wrong spot. Image angle color C black alpha 0.5. There we go. So we've done the first part of what we said we were going to do. Now we need to actually draw the surface in the room. So draw the surface. because you can draw onto a surface, but you won't be able to see that surface unless you actually draw it in the room. So that's what we're doing now. We're going to do draw surface 0 at position 0, 0, because it's the size of our room. So we're just going to draw at position 0, 0. Now watch what happens. This is kind of cool. Okay. We have our character, we can move around, and we've got kind of the thing working, but it just kind of looks like the tree's transparent. What's happening is we're drawing the surface on top of we're drawing the surface on top of the actual game right now, and so we can actually see the surface. This is what our surface looks like when we're running the game. But we need to actually make sure and remove the gray around it now, or everything that's not gray, I should say. That's the last step that we're missing. And for that we need a shader, and it's a really simple shader, which is good because I'm not an expert on shaders. So create a new shader, and we're going to call this shader remove gray, or leave gray, maybe leave gray. That makes more sense. Okay, we don't need to do anything with the vertex side of this, just the fragment side. What we're going to do here is I'm going to, so this is the output right here. This is what's going to be output on the shader, and we're setting it to this value right here. So let's create a new variable. We're going to create a vector 4. Now, if you don't know what I'm doing here, you can go watch my shader tutorials video that will teach you the basics of shaders. So, but we're going to create a vector 4, and it's going to be called color, and we're going to set it equal to this right here. Okay, this is the actual color of the pixel, because the shader will step through every single pixel in the room. This is the color of that pixel. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set this to something else based on what this color is. So what we want to do though is we want to say if we're not gray, basically, then the output should be vector. It should be a vector 4. I'm just going to make it 0, 0, 0, and 0, right? Basically completely transparent. You know, if we're not gray, then we're either black or white or some other color. We want to just be transparent. If we are gray, so the else, then we want to be the same color we were before. Unless you want to change the color, you can, but I'm just going to set it to the same color that we were before. Okay, so if we are gray, how are we going to check if we're gray? Well, let's put 2 of these in here. So we need some things to check to see if we are gray or not. And I'm just going to use the red, green, blue values of the color. So color.red is greater than, no, less than 0.25, 0.25. And color.green is less than 0.25. And color.blue is less than 0.25. Okay, so if the red, green, blue values will be between 0 and 1, and if they're less than 0.25, if they're all less than 0.25, then it's probably not gray, because gray is going to be somewhere in the middle, right? They'll all be about 0.5 or a range there in the middle. So this kind of gives us a little bit of leeway there. It's not exact. Then we also want to check, oops, I copied over extra parentheses. Then we also want to check to see if those colors are greater than 0.75. greater than 0.75 and greater than 0.75. Okay. Now we should have a working shader here. We just say, are you gray or are you not gray? If you're not gray, become invisible. If you are gray, stay your same color. That's basically what this shader does. Nothing too fancy there. Okay. Now what we need to do is inside of our draw silhouette, when we draw the surface, we first need to apply the shader to it. So shader, shader set, shader leave gray. And then after we draw the surface, we're going to do shader reset. Reset like this. Now we should be able to run this. I got a syntax error in my shader. Let's make sure I got everything right there. That's not my shader. Where's my shader? Shader leave gray. Var color, vector for color equals. Okay, that looks good. Parentheses greater than, and maybe I should have actually read the error message, because I can't see it. Shader at line 10. Oh, yeah. So you have to, these need to be basically decimal values. I always do that. But it's because vectors take floating, or they take floats, and so these need to be decimal values because a vector takes a float. So there we go. Let's run this again. And we're still getting an error. What's the deal? Did I leave another place without floating point values? Let me look at my shader reference code. It worked first time. Of course it'd work first time when nobody's watching. Did I miss? Oh, I'm missing. Oh, I'm missing a bracket over here, I think. But I can't see it because my code goes, oh no, I'm not missing it. It's right there. That would have been too easy, wouldn't it have been? Equals vector 4. Yeah. I actually, in my other shader, these actually aren't floating point values and it still worked. That is weird. Let's see. This looks exactly the same to me. That is so strange. Oh. There it is. I didn't double this. I didn't actually do my OR correctly. Okay. Hopefully it works this time. Yep. Okay, so now when we go over the tree, you can see the silhouette. Although it doesn't look super great. Maybe it's the color of our player. It's kind of a weird color. But like I said, you can actually use the shader to change the silhouette color to whatever you want it to be. Basically, once you get the intersection between the two sprites, you can make it whatever you want it to be. There you go. That's a little bit easier to see now. But we've got that working, the intersection between the two sprites. And like I said, once again, this isn't optimized. There's really no reason to continue to update and draw the shader when you're not behind a tree. Or what I mean is the surface. There's no reason to continue to update and draw the surface. You could do it only on collision events where you update the surface. So the rest of the time you just draw the surface that you already created. Or maybe don't even draw it. You only draw it when you're colliding with the trees. And there's a lot of different ways that you can optimize this and make it better, but this gives you guys the basics for how to create a silhouette. I had so many people ask me about this. How did I do it in grain war? And this is how I did it. I don't know if it's the best way, but it seems to make sense and it seems to work. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If this video was helpful to you, be sure and like it and share it on Facebook and Twitter and wherever. And I will talk to you guys later.